Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/PettyRevenge. In today's episode, saw a post about HOA revenge and had to post this story, pointers included for those in similar situations. Neighbor won't even face in my direction, so I made sure he's the one feeling left out. Roommate cheated me rent for 1 month. Cool. I ensured he paid me back for 2 months instead. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Saw a post about HOA revenge and had to post this story, pointers included for those in similar situations. I bought my home in 2001 in a 42-home community we bought right after September 11th, and we picked the community because the HOA fees were very low at just $51. It wasn't long after we bought the last home in the community, we got a sweet deal because of this, and business had really slowed right after September 11th, before those dues started going up. I was 22 at the time. Looking into the financial reports and into the meetings, it became clear why the dues were going up. The board was a little fiefdom set up by the developers of the homes. Our management company was a subsidiary corporation of the home builder, and the board members were a combination of one of the home developers and 2 of the very first home purchasers in the community, a 3-person board. The first action the board took with that increase in funds was to remove trees that were not even on the HOA's property. They were trees that sat in an area the HOA had access to for weed abatement. These trees' real crime was not that they were weeds, it was that they blocked the nice view of the board's president and vice president. At the same time, the *T violation letters started going out to about half the homes. You aren't mowing enough. You aren't watering enough. Every petty thing you can think of, they were issuing warning letters and starting to fine homeowners. Cue revenge time after getting one of those letters myself about weed abatement. Ironically, it was researching the community's CC and RS about weed abatement that led me to realize the trees that were cut were not on HOA property, and it was researching the annual budget that led to me finding out the huge weed abatement expense that was actually the community's funds being spent to remove trees solely for the 2 board member homeowners' views. I then found out that in California, all anyone needs to initiate a recall of the entire board and install a new one, if successful, was the signatures of 5% of homeowners delivered to the current board. That's a total of 3 houses in a 42-home community. LOL. The board was issued a recall notice not 48 hours after I had found out about the law, delivered to the management company in person. Ironically, the home builder's corporate office was in the exact same building as the management company. You'd think they would have wanted to not make their association so obvious, but hey, it was 2002. LOL. This is also when I found out that the management company basically had the entire board in its pocket, because they dragged their feet with the recall vote. They set it as far out as they could by law, in the middle of the day. Instead of holding it in the community like all board meetings, they set the place at a local park a couple miles away. They thought they were so brilliant doing this. So, me and my wife put together a proxy voting form for the election, and we went to every door in our community. We told them what was happening with their money, their plans to create an architecture committee that would require all homeowners to get approvals for any additions or changes, everything. It took us 3 rounds around the neighborhood, plus a couple extra visits to homes that had not answered initially. In the end, me and my wife had 26 revocable proxies for the election. For those unfamiliar with proxies, it basically gave me and my wife the power to cast that homeowners vote for them, if and only if they didn't show up to the election. The thoughtless board and management company actually made it easier for us to collect the proxies, because a lot of homeowners flat out could not make the time and place of the meeting. The recall day finally arrives. The current board members are all there, the management company representative is there, and 8 other homeowners showed up to the meeting, 6 of whom we had proxies for, and which were revoked by their attendance. They opened the meeting and started saying something about, "Oh, looks like a waste of money, there isn't a quorum, blah blah." I then said, "I'm sorry, but we do have a quorum." They're like, no, you need 22 homeowners here and there's only 12, the 3 board members, me and wifey, and the 8 others that showed up. And that's when I pulled out the trump card. I dropped all 26 proxies on the bench table everyone was sitting at and said I'm sorry, but there are more than 30 homeowners present, and pointed out the math. After subtracting the 6 homeowners that had showed up, we had 20 additional proxy votes that counted for both quorum and voting purposes. They all got wide-eyed, most especially the management company representative. He came over and looked at the forms very closely and compared it against a list of the homeowners. Even the people that were there and on our side did not realize how much work we had done to ensure the bullsh*t ended there and now. The recall meeting was opened, the board members voted not to recall plus their 3 friends that were on their side, the other homeowners present voted to recall and the vote stood at 6-6, tied. I then stood and declared that we were voting our 20 valid proxy votes to recall the entire board. Recall passed, 26 votes to 6. Next vote, who replaces the board members? It ended up becoming me and wifey and another homeowner that had voted for recall and was willing to take the seat. We elected ourselves to the board seats by a vote of 26-6. It was at this point that the management company then stated that Canon Management was immediately resigning as the management company for the community. I then pulled out the HOA's management contract, which clearly stated that either side needed to give 3 months' notice to effect resignation, and stated that we, the new board, accepted their resignation and set an end date for their services 3 months later. LOL. The management guide was nuclear pissed off. I, a 22-year-old kid at the time, had beaten them at their game and I had prepared for their possible quitting shenanigan. We replaced the management company after a couple months, having had proper time to find and vet an independent company, at about half the cost, no less. Did the same with the gardening services, which was also a home builder affiliated company, also at about half the cost. The old president of the HOA put his home up for sale about a month later, after we rescinded all the old violations and issued a notice to the old board members that we intended to vote on whether they had committed fraud against the association over their weed abatement tree removal action. I still vividly remember walking over to Dale's house, the old president, the day he was moving and giving him a big wave goodbye as he was getting into the car to follow his moving truck. He gave me the finger as he drove out, definitely one of my proudest moments in life. Neighbor won't even face in my direction, so I made sure he's the one feeling left out. Met my next door neighbor the day we moved into rental house. It's a nice neighborhood, so I can only imagine having a rental property isn't popular. I figured that going in and planned to go out of our way to be good, responsible, and quiet neighbors, and to make friends if we could. We complimented their freshly laid sod, which was being put in by landscapers while we chatted. It was clearly a big deal to him by how he talked about his yard. 2 days later, I accidentally rolled onto the edge of his grass while trying to back out and return our moving truck. It bunched up a piece of sod, but did virtually no damage. Didn't even create a divot in the dirt. Before I was even out of the truck, he screamed something and slammed the door behind him. I knocked until he answered, admitted the error, and offered to pay the landscaping bill to have it repaired, even though simply pushing the sod back into place and adding some water would have made it good as new. He said he would send me the bill and shut the door in my face. No bill, because surprise, there was no damage, but nonetheless he started treating us like we ran over his grandmother. Not only does he refuse to talk to us, he'll even go as far as turning 180 so to not face in our direction if we drive by. Ridiculous. Now honestly, he's putting in way more effort to avoid us than we even care about his approval in the first place. So really, joke's on him to begin with. But it's about the principle of the thing. Cue PettyRevenge. When we first met, he had said Halloween was a big deal in our neighborhood. I bought king-sized candy bars just in the chance he'd be told or hear how great our house was for having them. I made Christmas gifts for 3 neighbors on both sides, and these guys to be polite, and delivered them to introduce ourselves. Then, we've had every one of our other neighbors over for dinner. It's a very close neighborhood, so when they inevitably talk about us, it'll always be brought up how we had them over. Just a matter of time before he'll have to explain why. I also befriended his wife, and now we go on dog walks together every week. Since I had a group chat to give them both my number when we moved in, I use it to coordinate when we're meeting. He may not have anything to do with us directly, but I'll be damned if it's not going to be as difficult as possible for him. I've got big plans for a neighborhood barbecue this summer. That should really be a riot. Roommate cheated me rent for 1 month. Cool. I ensured he paid me back for 2 months instead. I joined a new job at a new city in a country new to me. I was looking for a 2BR apartment and wanted to share one room with someone else, as it came out cheaper than renting a 1BR alone. To my luck, I came to know about someone who worked in my company, who coincidentally was also from my city, who was also looking for a roommate. I got in touch with him and we went on apartment hunting. We found a decent one and he was reluctant to sign the lease and asked if he could stay outside the lease, as he may switch jobs and move out in few months. He was also not ready to get internet, power, water under his name. I was just too excited to have found an apartment. I went ahead with this arrangement. I was pretty confident I could find someone else if, when he leaves, so didn't care much. The move-in date was 30 days away, and for the days in between, I found temporary accommodation for the both of us at a friend's apt, who had just moved out of the city 15 days back, and his apt, just a 10 minutes walk from the unit I had leased for another 45 days and was also empty. He had left the unit empty, as lease breakage came higher than 2 months' rent. We both decided to stay in that unit for the 30 days and pay 1 month rent to my friend. We decided not to buy any big furniture until we move into our apt, to make the move easier, avoid hiring movers. A couple of days after moving into the temporary apt unit, my new roommate informed that his wife had just delivered a baby girl and he was going to travel home for a few weeks. I was happy for him and wished him luck. His travel date was just a day before the move-in date to the apt we had leased. So basically, I had to move both our clothes, luggage, furniture, etc. all alone. It was tiring, but since both the apartments were at walkable distance, I was able to finish the move in 4 to 5 hours. He came back almost a month later. Then came the first month of splitting the expenses. I sent him the Excel with the split up and he refused to pay the amount I had mentioned, half of rent plus water plus power plus internet, and he paid just 10% of his share, stating he was in home only for 3 days and will pay only for those many days. I was kind of okay with him paying for utilities prorated to the number of days he stayed, but I could not accept rent that way. Either he stayed or not, his bags and furniture was in home and I did not sublet the unit for the days he was out, and subletting wasn't even something we discussed before. Above all, I was the one who carried his luggage and furniture to the new apartment. He was not considerate. I gave him one last chance to be fair. I tried to explain the fallacies in his argument. But he ignored me. So, I decided he has to learn about something called consequences. I was having an international travel plan, kind of in the horizon for a long time, when I decided this was the time to book tickets and travel, for 4 weeks, plus I asked my employer to nominate me for some work-related conference at Vegas, 1 week, and I was also going to travel to meet my wife, who was living a 2.5-hour flight away, multiple times in the coming months, another 3+ weeks. Adding all these days, plus a couple of road trips with my friends, I must have been out of home for at least 2 months, and he ended up paying more than what he saved by cheating me earlier. I was so petty that once, while returning from a trip, I reached my apartment lobby by around 11:40 p.m. I just waited there until midnight, so that I'll have one less day shared, and I specifically mentioned this to him when we were splitting the bills. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.